Welcome back to the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast. That's right. You know who it is. It's Kevin Johnson from Leverage Consulting. And today, this is one of those topics that I tend to really like. And I know that it's one of those topics that sometimes others can shy away from. But it's funny, I think sometimes when it's pulled together, most everyone can get excited about this topic. That topic would be numbers or key performance indicators or metrics. Call them whatever you want. They're barometers, they're goals. You know, when you go to the doctor's office, they're looking for you to have a certain BMI. They're looking for you to have a certain heartbeat range for your age. They're looking for you to have a blood pressure in a certain range for your age and your condition. So these are things that we're used to. We know when you buy a car, you're looking for certain miles per gallon. Almost everywhere we go in life, we have metrics. We have things that we gauge things by. When you buy your food, it's protein, sugars, fiber, all these other things. I mean, it's funny how many people read labels. And think about how many bathroom scales are sold every year. So when you think about your business, when you think about your profitability, when you think about your success, we should be looking at those things with the same type of focus, whether it is miles per gallon or our nutritional values that are on the labels or anything else. When we are looking for how do we get ahead, what are we supposed to do here? Let's go to metrics. Let's go to KPIs and things like that. So I sat with a client for about 3 hours the other week. By the time you hear this, it'll be the other week. It was last week when I recorded this. But we sat together for about 3 hours, and it was crazy the amount of stuff that we went through in the matter of 3 hours. And I don't know about you, 3 hours may sound like a long time to talk about numbers, but it's not when we're talking about your success, your future. There's oftentimes people don't even know whether they're doing good or not. And for you to be able to walk away and say, I don't even know, or walk into a meeting and say, I don't even know if I'm doing good or not. When you walk into a meeting and you can't sit there and say, I'm doing well, I'm doing okay, I'm doing terrible, we don't know. So to be able to walk out of the meeting and say, I know where we stand. I know what has to be done by, let's just say by the end of September. I know what needs to be done by the end of December. I know what needs to be done by March 31st. Now I've got things that I can work towards. And I know a lot of folks are just, it's not their thing to go compile and pull all those types of numbers together. And quite honestly, you can find somebody to do that. And whether there are people, it's funny when you go to any business, if we take a dental practice, there are certain people that they would wither and die on the vine if you ever ask them to do bookkeeping or pull numbers together or track something. It just feels icky to them. Yet you have other people that absolutely geek out on that stuff and absolutely love it. So just because you don't like it, or somebody else doesn't like it, doesn't mean everyone hates it. So think about who within your world would love those types of things, to be able to pull it together, because really you want to know every day, every week, every month, or every other week, you want to know, where do we stand? So for example, with this client, we wanted to know what their production was. We wanted to know what their cash account looked like. So we had literally, the owner is going to get a text message every other Friday to know exactly where we stand relative to our production goal, our cash goal, and a few other things. And it allows them to know at a glance. So this is just a text. Now, mind you, you may have programs that have dashboards or other things. That's way better. If you minimally just had something that you could look at periodically so you knew every week, you don't have to go to someone else and make them stop everything that they're doing just so you can know those numbers. If we turn it into a system to where our salespeople bubble those numbers up to one key person, that key person pulls a few other numbers together, and boom, we send those numbers out to the right people who need to know the health and where the practice stands or where the business stands. Without that, we're just guessing. And I can't tell you how many times over the years I've had owners or managers say, we're doing terrible. They're hating on the team because they think that the team is doing a terrible job. And I could go on, but it's funny and sad really all at the same time, in that they feel that way, but that's just it. They feel that way. They don't know. And that again is where the numbers can take someone. So if we take someone, and I'm a big believer in the DISC assessment. If you understand and know what that is, if you don't know what it is, you can Google it and read up about it. There's tons of videos out there about it, but essentially it's a personality assessment tool. And I know in another podcast I talked about how I was in out on someone's back patio with a bunch of people who are very successful in life, and we were talking about the success of people with the different personality types, the D's, the I's, the S's, and the C's. And it was interesting because a lot of people will look at high D's as the type of people, they may not be people-oriented, but they are results-oriented. They don't care about feelings, they care about outcomes. Then you have people who are high I's, very people-oriented, and they get things done because they inspire people oftentimes. And the conversation came around to the C's. And the interesting thing was that C's can sometimes be looked at as being the type that hold back or they procrastinate a lot. And I think a lot of times it's because they don't have the data in front of them. But the interesting thing is, once they have the data and they know 2 + 2 = 4, a D looks like a pussycat compared to a C with information. So again, when you have a high I, and all we need is someone to pull those things together. And it's interesting, a lot of high I personalities, they're either going to feel super excited and motivated because they see their numbers and we're doing well, and it's just like fuel to the fire. Whereas if a high I gets those numbers and maybe those numbers don't excite them, maybe they quite honestly, it makes them feel a little sad. At least they know where they have to focus, and they know where to go, and maybe they go to other people and inspire them to get things done, so we turn those numbers around because they like that feeling, that good feeling. And then the C's, again, when those C's get that information, they're unstoppable. So really all we need to do is find someone who can pull those numbers together. And if you listen to my other podcast, the previous podcast, I talked about how we should not have to know how to do absolutely everything. I don't want you to know how the numbers are pulled together to the nth degree. You may need to know just so the first go around that we're pulling the right information. But after that, we just need to know the numbers. We don't need to know the minutia. We would just want to step on the scale and know what that number is. That's it. Because then we know we're doing well and we can go about our business and keep going down the path that we were. If those numbers don't look like what we want them to look like, then we know we need to rearrange our coming week or a couple of weeks until we get those numbers back in line. So, yes, I do absolutely geek out on numbers. I don't like it all the time. I don't want to sit. In fact, for those of you who don't know, I got my degree in accounting. I worked in a tax practice for about 6 years. And ultimately, I found out it's not what I wanted to do with life, because you sat behind a desk and that's about all you did. Whereas if you use numbers, you can influence outcomes and you can change your own world just by knowing the numbers, because then you know how to spend your time. As I said, there's so many other things in life that we use that are numbers driven. And sometimes we just need to take that same concept and apply it to our day-to-day activities, our business, our role, our job, and just be consistent with it. That's really the big thing with this, is it's consistency. Just like if you want to lose weight, you step on the scale. If you don't like the number, then you modify your habits. And it really comes down to two things: what you feed your body and what you do with your body. Meaning, if you exercise more and you eat healthier foods or less food, guess what happens? You're going to be happy or inspired by that number. So, yes, I definitely recommend geek out on the numbers. If it's not the kind of thing that excites you pulling it together, find the person who will do it for you. If you don't know what to interpret or what numbers you're even supposed to be looking at, find someone for that too. because quite honestly, neither one of those things are an excuse. So that being said, I hope you enjoyed this one. I know for some of you, it might get you a little riled up. Some of you, it might make you, I don't know, put a pit in your stomach or something, but that can be fixed too. So that was your Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast. Questions, comments, you know where to find me. Stay tuned because I've got another one coming up that I think will be as impactful or more impactful than what you heard in this podcast and the last one.